The feed is coming for you and everyone else. Thought I would start with a lovely zombies parody, it looks like. Cover for copyright safety. And gonna turn it down. Spectacular artwork in the background. High School of the Dead. Everyone loves it. Gravity defying or physics defying boobs. Although I'm sure they'll be highlighted somewhere in here. But we're here to talk about feed tonight, okay? So let me put this down to the bare minimum as much as just a little bit of background noise. Probably not even noticeable enough. Do in your head. Get out of your head, people, and get out of your butts. What? Sorry about that. I guess I can take it off in a moment. But video games is one thing, anime is another, and let's get this party started. Because feed is quite an interesting thing opposed to this reality bending mess that is in there, okay? Yeah, I can get it off now. Get it out of your head, folks, okay? It's just very unflattering to see. So we're going into feed. Of course, I have a playlist, but I'm going to have to do a little wiggly waggly thing here in my life. So got something, a trailer instead of me introducing feed. There seems to be at least popular enough to have a decent trailer for it. So let's see how you enjoy this, and I will expand on it, I hope, at the very least.
See, once zombies were something you found only in horror movies, usually in the process of chowing down on nubile young girls who forgot to put on most of their clothing before going to explore the creepy crypt at the bottom of the hill. The pre-zombie world must have been a very boring place, but thanks to the wonders of mad science, a bunch of smart men and women found a cure for boredom, and cancer, and the common cold, and oh right, death. Or at least staying dead. As soon as the dead started to rise, things got way more interesting, and we entered a 2-year period known as the Rising. During the Rising, zombies ate people shot zombies, and a good time was had by all. Well, at least the people who didn't die, that is. Also during the Rising, internet journalism rose to a position of prominence and respectability, largely because the bloggers, tweeters, and status updaters of the world weren't afraid to stand up and shout, "Holy zombies!"
Yep, sort of like how we are living today. Mainstream press isn't really giving us much bang for the buck. So we're turning to alternative media, of course. This might be a little bit lengthy, but almost.
That's where my sister Georgia and I come in. Zombies aren't the only danger in the world of 2041. For one thing, there's me. I'm Sean Mason. Trust me, I'm a journalist.
So this is what we go. Interesting sort of trailer for this. By journalist, he means he's an action reporter, basically one of these jackasses who go online and does stupid stuff. In the world of feed, or should I say, the Newsflesh Trilogy, as it's known, that's poking zombies with a stick. In fact, that's how the first book starts off with. It's Sean poking a zombie with a stick and him being dumb and them almost getting eaten alive. Interesting thing about feed is it doesn't start in the very beginning of things. It starts a little bit long in the timeline. As it pointed out, 24 years. It's the announcement of 28 weeks that got me thinking about this series again. How will be life living with the zombies and not just the dead one? But yeah, Shaun of the Dead one. So journalism is a big component. Basically, everyone was shitting on the journalist because they didn't really report on it, fact checking, they didn't believe it. Hell, George Romero is like considered a saint in the series, which is a little cool thing. Is this in our timeline? Supposedly he took cred for it and was like became a zombie and he's eating well now. But this is why so many people are named George. to the point where there's two Georges who are both girls in the book. One goes by George, the other one goes by Buffy. Plenty of other references to our modern culture, but not too heavy to really come off too hard in there. So, the journalist aspect of Feed is quite interesting. There is the newsies who are just straight news things. And it's a bit interesting. There's the Irwins, named after good old Saint, the crocodile guy who died by stingray. So they're named for that. Basically, their shelf life is really limited. And there's a third type called fictionals, which I don't really know how that comes into play. They, I guess online bloggers, basically Tumblr posters out there in the future. It's all evolved. And there's quite a few interesting things out there in particular. Okay, sorry, I read chat and was trying to comprehend it there for a moment. Sorry about my momentary lapse in thing. So, there is a couple of things I would like to frame this outside of myself. So, let's get something else up on the docket. Apparently, when I found about this series when I was researching Night of the Living Dead for college, and it's quite interesting overall, the sort of way it takes. And because, the anime chicks aren't working for you guys, let's bring up a real one. One of the few reviews of the actual series. I'll probably interject here and there. I'm giving it a bit of time because the fluff in the beginning of this, that, like always.
Did the series with Faye and Kayla. I'll leave our channels linked below.
Also, this sort of has a ASMR feel. It feels like this woman does ASMR videos on her sideline. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. Probably more profitable than this.
Newsflesh Triology, you're following Georgia and Sean Mason, who are like adopted siblings, and they live with their adopted parents. And this is set like 25 years after the zombie outbreak. My cat is sitting on my laptop. Please don't do that. I'll leave them sitting. I'll leave the books up there so you can see them.
In there.
Oh yeah. He's up there now. Gonna remove my cup of tea. This is set about 25 years after the zombie outbreak, and the world is kind of in a new semblance of normal. So you can still go to the shops and you can buy food and you still live in your house, but everything's like reinforced. You're doing constant blood tests to see if you've developed and amplified into a zombie.
Yep, constant blood test. Insane. If the sanity of the pandemic got too crazy, it was very reminiscent of this series. But instead of blood tests, I don't know how individual experiences, but people check for temperature, make sure you didn't cough, mask. Really telling and the fact that this book took place pretty much, no, it didn't take place. Sorry about that. The apocalypse was in 2014. I think the book came out like 2010, 2011. Is quite interesting. 10 years before the big lockdown, and hell, they stayed in a lockdown because zombies a little bit more scarier than the coronavirus, just a little bit. But the insanity of it does build up, even with how it sort of develops.
So everything in this world is like super safe and secure, and the only way. Originally with the outbreak, people didn't trust real news sources like from TV and print media.
Yeah, the accent, I guess, is a little bit wrong. A little bit hard to tell, but yeah. I think even the sort of beginning part, if she's hard to understand, I will explain it. And I'll put up pretty visuals here. Just to have a sort of background for people, not any of that crazy anime stuff. But yeah, she's explaining how basically everyone is shut-ins now. Okay, they get to a certain component where they're locked down for so long that they don't want to socialize. Everything's done over the freaking internet, And couple of things come out of that. So it's like lockdown mentality out there. She's speaking British, yes. Might be not translate too well, or maybe Flax's Phoenix just as being a troll. But I should take up on this, but give some pretty visuals just to have something to go off of so things aren't so lame on my side. 'Cause visuals are important, people. I don't know why. Don't ask me. And that looks horrible. Maybe I should skip the visual component of it. Or I can go with my alternative. I talked about this years ago. Let's make fun of myself. Okay, that is the perfect way to really cap this off. I have myself explain it in an old file. Make fun of myself also on do boot with that. Because, visual aids are good. And this is a great visual aid because I overlaid it on a Noel version run of Resident Evil 2. So let's see how dumb my past self was. And at the worst case, I can always make fun of myself because my mic and quality talking about feed while playing Resident Evil 2.
So feed is a
Oh god, bad off from the start.
basically a dystopian future
Oh god.
with zombies. Think about zombie nations, Black Summer after they got through all that. Somehow the American government, where the story's set, is functioning still after the zombie apocalypse. Sort of a dystopian future where survival of the fittest, I guess you could say.
Oh god, such a dumbass.
And the added component to make it less like all the other zombie series.
Oh god, I have not learned.
Oh, come on, don't kill me.
Yeah, also I did this during gameplay, so it's rather ad hoc. But yeah, I think everything leading up to this, oh yes, the sexy sex of Resident Evil 2 remake. So I did some overlay work on that, and it's as cringe as I remember. So this will be my background for now because I can't stand listening to my old commentary, which was rather crap while I was playing the game. But yeah, everything gone over. You follow George Mason, Sean Mason, who's the Irwin, and you have the fictional who's Buffy. She gets a little bit OP. It's quite interesting overall. The funny thing is, yeah, you can tell this is pre-COVID and even pre-Trump, especially since all the things, but they're following a Republican candidate. They pretty much start off with an action sequence where you get to know the adopted twins, their parents. Then you sort of get some good ass world building in there. Yeah, Macy Dixon's line. The parents are quite cringe. They lost their son, and they pretty much adopted the two children as a sort of as a clout chase. Okay, they lost their child. There's a lot of political and social upheaval all around. Hell, the first scene with the parents going out to eat is really telling. They purposely, to show that they're not afraid, eat outside. So they go into this whole diatribe about how it's insane for people to do everything, the paranoia of zombies and people amplifying, becoming zombies suddenly, which is a risk here. You don't need to be bitten. This is why they're doing constant tests to see who is going about. But quite interestingly enough, John Del Rose, I asked him about it. Mira Grant, he might have came up. He was part of Sad Puppies. He would sort of know the logic there. But yeah, sorry, I'm seeing the stop. I shouldn't look at chat half the time. It's a little bit scary what you guys are talking about. Maybe another time. Let's not get into the wrench work, throwing a wrench into my plans, you guys. But absolutely. So you get to know the atmosphere, the fear, and the sort of lockdown culture where everyone, before you go in a house, you have to take a blood test. It's a little more extreme than coronavirus, where if you know about that, everyone wore a mask. At least they don't do that there. Doesn't really help you against zombie bites or anything else, but constant tests taken to make sure you're not in the midst of turning into a zombie. But getting to the next part, they're following a Republican candidate because hell, why the hell not? As I said, post Trump society. And it's really controversial for this Republican candidate to actually get bloggers. Because even though the society at large is sort of against the whole sort of blogger community, that's what the people picked up. So this presidential thing made a bold move by getting this team of upstart journalists, one with Newsy, someone who reports on news, uh, Irwin, someone who does action shit, fucks with stuff, entertainment, and a fictional chick who's way too tech. She really gets OP, but it works within the story. For spoiler that I'm really not sure if I should reveal right away. You do blogging. I am a blob, okay? Blog. It's all the same to me. But yeah, it's quite an interesting mix of a story, and it really is very telling how it really turns out overall. Let's get back. Let me just listen to some more.
Where's that eye? Another smack.
Okay, that was a waste of time because this was not really well done. What was I thinking? But yeah, they follow a Republican candidate. It's all fine and dandy. You find out these bloggers or journalists. It's controversial. Hell, there's even someone running for the presidential campaign who's just got a boob job, and they constantly make fun of her in the series. Like, yeah, the boob job will get you so far with the Republican Party, horny jackasses there, but it won't get you in the presidential seat. And it comes to the moderate Republican, sensible, still Christian values, not willing to throw away life to a hardline religious zealot. Okay. Of course, he ends up being a bad guy in the particular series there. Not quite sure how that. So, yeah, ill planned. Go along with it. I was hoping to use a little bit of help. I think I'm going to need that help again. Not the British chick. Let's try another one from my pot because incredibly unfocused some of the time. Let's use another of because I'm not being very helpful in the past. And yeah, this really is not getting much. This actually is a better one. And hopefully, yeah,
When I finished this book. They really
a little
were.
cringe.
I'm glad I didn't
bear with
finish
it.
reading it in public because I was a blubbering, sobbing mess.
Yeah, it's all women who reviewed this. It goes to tell you. They have a female protagonist, at least in the first book. Quite an interesting mix there.
Smiths, I think I got it from. Yes, because it was in a whole video. So in 2014, the common cold and cancer were both cured by different teams working on them. They were using sort of engineered viruses. Unfortunately, due to huge misinformation and a terrorist attack, these
Yes, just like nowadays, there's activists about, and they're thinking they know better, so they release this sort of a thing that's supposed to cure the common cold. It mutates and creates zombies. A little bit unrealistic, but I like the thought that's put into the world building. Overall, you can tell Mira Grant did a great job with research. Okay, hell, she has a whole a huge ass acknowledgement, at least for the second book, with all the people who fact checked, colluded with her about the variety, about the political intrigue stuff that ends up coming up in the first book and second book. The second book goes a little off the rails in the third one. Still good for what it was.
Managed to combine to create something a little bit more horrifying than what they were trying to cure. The virus takes over the body at death and gives the body one command: to feed. The virus reproduces in protein, so the body is just trying to infect more and more flesh, basically.
Oh God, does she really spend this much time in the short video to explain it?
The other children were orphaned in this period of time. They weren't related, but they were both adopted by the Masons, who had their own agenda for adopting 2 children. So they grew up as brother and sister. After this amount of time, life has settled into something slightly uncomfortable. It's more of a farce of day-to-day life. There are constant blood tests and security measures. People are too scared of the outside, and they rely on other people to go outside for them. And this is basically what Sean and Georgia do. The traditional press isn't trusted quite as much as it was before the Rising. The news reported that there was nothing going on, nothing to worry about, whereas bloggers were saying, the dead are walking, defend yourself.
Wait, pause. What? You got a problem with her stare, I guess? Being hypercritical, I see. It is some janky editing. Better than me. Okay, at least my old video. But she's fairly accurate. I don't know why she's going so short with this. Base bloggers, that is true.
This is what we're going to do. This is how to survive. So after the Rising, the bloggers tend to be more trusted and a more valuable source of news than basically the news.
Oh, God.
Sean and Georgia Mason have set up their own.
Is she just reading the Wikipedia? Okay, this was a failure, of course, like most of my attempts. You can never understand anything. Yeah, I'm going to skip ahead. She's just going over some of the stuff.
Georgia Mason is a newsie. She goes and reports on what's going on. Her brother Sean is an Irwin. He goes and pokes zombies with sticks and films it so that people who are too scared to leave the house can enjoy the outside world. And finally, there are fictionals. Create stories, art.
Oh God, is this the reading? And this was the most highly viewed video that I could find on feed. Okay, God damn, there's just nothing good out here. It got even snubbed for a ripoff of Red Shirts by John Scalzi. Okay, probably political bullshit within that decision there. Back to my just back to my sort of background, because she's doing a fucked up job explaining this. So they go onto a campaign, the school guy, the campaign trail. It makes big news. Even the porn star person running for it even tries to copycat the cool moderate Republican candidate. So they go into this whole mess and try to fight things out. We're not doing wrench ward, guys, okay? I don't really have the time. You children should be able to figure it out yourself. Here. Okay. As I said, sometimes looking at chat is not that great of an idea out there. I'll figure out there. Yeah, who knows with all these Brits, okay. But going within the actual story, it gets quite intriguing. The weaponization of the zombie virus comes up. The political world building of this series generally is rather epic, in my personal opinion, especially for something told from a female perspective. Okay, but it's done well enough. Generality, okay. MS better show up. There's a whole bunch of other issues. Like, there's quite an interesting issue with this virus. The main character, her eyes are a little bit freaky, so she has to have shades on because the virus sort of was contained within her eyes. I forget the exact term for it, but it will come up again later. But So basically, these bloggers, George Mason, Sean Mason, and their lovable blonde ditzy genius tech fictional called Buffy joins this crew. Okay. And the Republican state, and going through this, it's even more strict when you come here. You get a bodyguard type who also has the sunglasses, but not because of some eye condition. Okay. Some interesting little tidbits are put here and there within there. Really? Didn't like the R2 remake? Everyone's a critic, but yeah, just putting up for background because that's what I did it on. Here's some of my old commentary again.
Into the conspiracy type crap that's so funny in these political thrillers, although I really don't want to classify this as it. Sort of technology.
Oh God, so bad, so bad. Me in the past, you needed to learn a little bit of style or some fucking skills. Get good. Elden Ring is DLC's coming out very soon. Excited for that. But back into the actual story. So they're following this. There's a whole bunch of other issues that sort of take precedence. The first real event. So they're on the campaign trail. They have a little, you get the world building, like they talk about how it was in the past. And you find out people are not many people are willing to go outside because they're worried about the zombies and the virus, like the coronavirus in many, many, many ways. So they have this sort of a stand-up thing. Everything's going peachy keen until a zombie attack comes for the party. So they have to deal with all that rigmarole, and they sort of take a certain stance here and there. But they get embroiled in this this conspiracy, as I was saying in the past. A conspiracy where you don't know what's true. And there's a lot of political intrigue here and there. And I was wondering how I was really going to work into this. Let's get into journalism. Another interesting concept within journalism in this world, you have to state your bias, which I found extremely interesting. I think that would actually be great. We have a whole bunch of journalists nowadays. They're all considered the same, but there's some people who state they're biased. The journalists, if you want to be registered, there's a whole bunch of rules, even if you're a blogger. And I sort of like that. You got to state your bias. That means you got to be self-aware enough to know your particular bias, to know your audience, and be honest, have ethics. Ethics is a strong standard here. And George is even talking about in this world, there are all sorts of journalists within her own newsy thing. She goes on like, oh, there's some journalists who just never go into the field and never do any real reporting, thinking that they're unbiased because they don't actually do any reporting. And that's sort of funny. Sort of how the journalists are nowadays, it seems like, especially with the coronavirus. And a lot of misinformation comes up during the actual series. Oh, what are you guys fighting about? Where did the feed come up? Okay. Okay, sorry. I'm distracted by chat. Let's grab some. Might as well engage with it for a bit. Let's grab some of the stuff that's in the OG, and they made a modder cancel his RE2 mod project to make their version. Mod had it. That sounds rather lame. Overall, yeah, the game, the remake probably had issues in development. Capcom ain't the best, but those Japanese people like Nintendo with all that fun stuff. But feed, let me listen to myself to get back on track.
You heard her. I swear to God, my brother is stars, and I.
Sherry, get over here.
Yeah, not being very helpful, are you? Was waiting for the cutscene. Should have edited down more, but old background footage works well enough. So you get the first attack. It seems to sabotage. You've learned within this world that using the zombie virus is like, you don't want to do it to commit it because that's terrorism to use an assassination attempt, as it rightfully should be. But as the story goes along, the plot thickens in many different ways. And strangely enough, you know who has like super power in this world? The authorities, the press? No, you know who has the power in this world where everyone's concerned about blood tests and all that? The FDA. No, sorry. FDA, that's the Food Administration Company, the CDC in America, and who in around the world. They have almost unrestricted powers. Sounds familiar to anyone out there? You know, just their word is taken as law and they can kill people just by failing a blood test, okay? The fear is high and there's many things that come up like gun violence. There's one particular scene where Georgia manages to during Super Tuesday managed to talk to the rival political assistant to the main character. I don't freaking know. Oh, the opposition to Ryman, who is the moderate Republican person that freaking is going against. He's the hyper military guy. Ryman is the other candidate that the troop trio is following. And maybe I'll see how well this turned out. Oh God, she says almost nothing. She says the very intro. This is just almost pathetic how short this video is and how slow.
The zombies. I absolutely love this. Feed by Mirror Grant. And I've already gone and got Deadline, so I can start reading that. This is possibly the best zombie book I've read since World War Z. And that's saying a lot because I've read a lot of zombie books. This reminded me somewhat of The Walking Dead in the fact.
Oh God, that's not a good thing. That's not playing to its strengths, guys. Okay, I need aid. Okay, I can't just talk out my ass this whole freaking time. I can try. I'm not used to it, guys. Okay.
It's not even just going to be little spoilers. It'll probably be big spoilers.
Okay, I got this part.
Go in depth with it now.
This is the British girl again. It's probably even worse quality.
Right. Where do you want to start?
I don't even know if subtitles are available.
Series, right?
No, auto-generate.
Right. Start with feed.
Book to book, I guess. I mean, if they all blend in at a certain point, it's fine. But, you know.
They probably will a wee bit. Yeah.
So how did you feel about the fact that this book?
Oh, watch out. She has she, her pronouns.
Right. Hello. Welcome to my channel and the live stream. And I've got Faye here with me.
How did it go back?
I enjoy it. But I don't know. I really enjoyed it in this. I think it was. Yeah.
So how did you feel about the fact that this book became so political? I mean, and obviously there's the implication it's going to be political because they are following a campaign. But how did you feel about the way the politics was handled?
See, I don't ever really read politic-heavy books because I just don't really enjoy it. But I don't know. I really enjoyed it in this. I think it was, for me, a good balance.
Yeah.
It's the same way like that. I only like reading romance if there's a huge plot, or if it's got a magical element in it, or if it's like a paranormal element. That I like it, the balance interwoven together. I feel like it worked like that in this. It was like politics, but the horror zombie element. And then I think because you were following the bloggers, it was a little bit removed.
Yeah.
So it worked for me in that sense. But in terms of the actual politics, I can't say I really have too much of an opinion on it. I don't know.
I think the thing for me about the politics, if it was just the way that the sociological impact kind of had, in a sense. So things like from having bloggers as part of your campaign because they are a more trusted form of media now, all the way through to politicizing something like the zombies. Like, that is exactly something that would happen in the real world. People would politicize. If there were a zombie outbreak, zombies living on the borders of a city, there's no way that wouldn't get.
Yeah, this is why I like using other people talking off of stuff, because she does bring up a valuable point. Her point of view on it is probably a bit different. This is a few years ago. So this was during the pandemic. Yeah, the darn border. Build the walls probably comes up. And I'm guessing Tate is his name. That's the diehard theologue, good Christian boy who was a military man who serves as a somewhat of a villain during this particular section. Definitely has a campaign war, almost contradictory sort of policies, like not helping someone out unless you do the blood test and check to make sure they're all right, but let in freedoms for other Americans, which put other risks, because it's not only humans who can amplify and turn into zombies, as the series sort of turns out. I think if you're over a certain weight threshold, if I remember correctly, it's 40 pounds, you can just zombify. In fact, there's quite an interesting backstory to a blogger who comes on to the team. He was an older guy following a big titty represented in the story, but her campaign sort of fell apart during Super Tuesday. So she brings information to the golden trio of Sean, Georgia, and Buffy. So that's quite an interesting backstory within him, which adds to the world building. He was affected by the amplification, and once he hit a certain weight, he zombified, and that fucked up that one guy's life, who later became the vice president. But I'm getting a little bit too ahead.
Dragged into politics. So I really appreciate the different takes on it. The whole, it really did show kind of like American mentality. It's like, it even has social commentary in terms of like gun violence, right? Where you have the idea of like one side of the political spectrum being like, okay, let's just all go grab some guns and shoot our way through this, and then another half of the spectrum being like, let's just keep evolving, kind of thing.
I don't know what she's talking about. Oh, guys, she's a little bit off base. Yes, there's talk of guns. Everyone has guns. Everyone carries guns. All the bloggers need license to go in certain restricted zones. Okay, they don't want to wage a stupid ass war sometimes. Like, there's this whole Alaskan war that comes up, and supposedly they lost Alaska to the zombies. Okay, leave Alaska alone. It seems like a fruitless thing, but Tate, the diehard, is pushing for all the zombies to die, no matter the casualties on the side. Wage a sort of war on the undead. And there's many issues there, especially when there's certain people who suffer from a certain condition where the virus sort of zombifies a certain part, but it's contained. That'll come up later in the second book. But following along the story, campaign sort of interesting. You get to see the sort of moderate versus extremists on the Republican side, because the Democrats in this sort of society wouldn't actually have a fucking flying chance. I think there's a book later that goes into the Democratic side, but I really don't want to do it because I think after a certain point when it was written, I'm sure there's a certain amount of rhetoric within that, because the writer probably turned to the sort of loose lib side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like this.
And it's nice to see like a zombie book done in this kind of way, because it allowed room for all of that, because in all the other zombie books they're just running for your life and there's no room for anything other than just, and
yes, it's built around a society that's been living with zombie for 24 years and hasn't just destroyed them entirely. It's a constant war. People can have fear of amplifying, as they say, activating of this virus, which will turn them into a zombie. And there's a certain element to that comes up. So yeah, they're still on the political angle. Let's see if they got a little
that's the
more.
right word, nuance. Whereas this, because everyone's safe, people still have to have jobs, they still have to go to shops, they still have to function in their society. It's just how extreme are you going to be with your safety and what route are you going to go down? And I think that's what was quite good about going through the books. And what I liked about the short story set in Australia,
Yes,
is it gave another really, really detailed account of how a totally other different.
Romeo, stop simping for the IJP Mexican. Okay, stop it. Okay, he's cool, but he's not that cool.
Country handled it.
Yeah.
So though Maher, never said his name out loud. Maher.
I say Mahir, but I have no idea how it is pronounced.
Oh yes, they have the British voice of reason who spends all of the first book in England. There's quite an interesting story behind him. Supposedly, India got overrun by zombies. Go figure. It's realistic, okay? India isn't the most hygienic place, but there is an interesting story about Indian came up with the idea for the testing tet by using the dialysis machine to test for the viral load, and he used that to get a whole bunch of Indians over to England. Quite an interesting thing when the political intrigue really starts up.
I mean, he's British, so I assume that it's either Mahir or Mahir.
Yes. Although he's from England, you don't get too much of the English perspective. He just kind of...
Yeah, who cares about that? They do bring up freaking India and how they turn out. Oh, she's Australian, not Indians, not British. I forgot that.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's like interwoven into like the science that I absolutely loved. I just thought it was so appropriate what measures they implemented, because everyone is suddenly...
Thought the changes in human behavior, like the integration of sanitation methods being normalized. I really don't know what that person is, but talking about
cured of like minor illnesses and like cancers being eradicated.
Yeah. Also, interesting thing, they have a whole segment during Super Tuesday about smoking. Since cancer's gone, smoking's being pushed by everyone. They have this whole thing, the tobacco lobbies in everyone's freaking campaign. Republicans, Democrats, except for our good boy who doesn't even take money from him. He seems like a Boy Scout pretty much running for the Republicans, with sensible sensibilities between keeping the faith. There's one old woman during the first scene who talks about the Republicans, the main character they're following, basically his stance on God. Like, are they in the end times? Should God be helping out? Some interesting questions between sanity and a zombie in the midst of a zombie post-apocalyptic world, trying to live with the zombies and dealing with the faith of God. And Ryman, I remembered his name now. That's the candidate they're following. It's like, I see this as a test, and we need to sort of persevere through it. And we should see it as a test. This isn't the rapture crap like that. There's a certain nuance in this book that I like. And you won't find it in many zombie books, because zombies, as they brought up earlier, is usually about just the early days. And I think the world building of this is well thought out of how society technologically would go, because hell, even nowadays we have questions about the journalists being controlled by the government. And I'm sure that this world sort of reflects that. You can't control the bloggers, as you'll find out in the particular series. Let's just jump ahead, see if they have any more.
Sorry.
Oh, God. Technical difficulties. I know that feeling.
clever in the sense that she never made it seem like Sean would be the who you pass the mantle on to kind of character. He was literally dorky sidekick material until he wasn't, and it literally was like a because you have to step it up kind of character. And I really liked that development. I appreciate that there will be people out there who don't like reading Sean. I know that Kayla wasn't the biggest fan of reading Sean, and I can understand why. But for me, I just
What's with this reading Sean? Reading the character? Or are they talking about, or are they jumped to the second book? Okay. Let me go through the switch back and finish up with what I was saying about the first book. Spoilers, people. Okay. Super Tuesday. They have this sort of interaction between George, who's a female. Keep that in mind. George is typically a male name, but everyone wanted to name their kids after George Romero because he was considered a saint after the zombie apocalypse. She sort of goes to this Super Tuesday. They get this guy named Rick who sort of gets the information from the porn star candidate who pulls out and puts everything behind the more moderate Republican candidate. He joins. Crap like that, and why they're trying to decide who's getting the ticket. Is it going to be Tate, the extremist, or the more moderate Ryman? Probably saying that wrong, but that's most things with what I say. And who's going to get it? Who's going to get it then? Okay. So he wins the ticket, but they get a call from someone. Something happened at Ryman's home. Okay. Something happened. Not going to spoil it just yet. It's a tragedy. He's on stage accepting the Republican announcement for he's going to go for the elections. Okay. And he has a tragedy at home. So from there, let's see if I pick it up here real quick while I collect my thoughts there.
What do we have here?
Nope. Of course, my dumbass of the past is still just playing the game. No wonder this video failed.
Should have spanned on the first book before.
Yep. Okay. Background, soothing visual aid for everyone to go along with it. I don't know why the American is here. Americans aren't really welcome, except for me. Sorry, bad joke. I don't know why. I tell no one anything. But as you're going along with feed, a tragedy occurred, and it's quite insidious, okay? Because it comes about... Yeah, you remember I told you there was 3 people. The newsie, Georgia Mason, and spoilers past this point. I mean, everything else has been spoilers. Sean, the twins, and their tech genius Buffy. So at one point, Buffy tries to tell him to get out, okay? There's been an attack already, blah, blah, blah. They go along a trip, and what do you know? They get attacked on a convoy because, hell, they got equipment they got to move across. Hell, the highway situation. Toll booths? No, blood booths, okay? So I said, they're really worried and really testing people way too often. In fact, you find out later, this sort of testing is a way to create this fear because the testing doesn't really tell you the much. There's a lot of misinformation spread by the World Health Organization and the CDC. And everyone else is just dancing along their strings overall. Not going to spoil too much of that. But as it goes along, there is some hinky things that happen. They get attacked. Hell, there's something called run flex. I think this is real. So they try to make it look like an assault. You find out there's even a law where if you they can kill you if you get reported dead. Someone reported them dead after they got attacked and said they got turned into zombies. Not everyone got turned into zombies, just good old blonde Buffy, tech genius, where she confesses she's been working for the enemy and she got really scared, okay? Not going to burn those details out right now. But yeah, she confesses as she's sort of turning into a zombie because she got bit by her boyfriend who got turned into a truck. The details are interesting there, and they're all things to sort of get a hold of overall within the story. And let's go back while I take a breath and get a drink.
Overall. Convenient in style.
Why are you so useless with me of the past? I really should have edited this down to be more watchable, but and that's why I didn't get paid the big bucks or any bucks at all. But going back into it, so Buffy confesses, so they know they're being watched, and they got this new hang me on. So they have this whole discussion. They get into the info. They find out it's the extremist who sort of is setting this up, but they need to bring this to the candidate they're following. But he's a bit pissed about the accusation about the guy who's going to be his VP now. So it's going to be harder to convince him of all this rigmarole down the line. Hola. Trying to pull this off as well as I can. No clue who anyone is. God, everyone's changing. A plastic Phoenix Indian. I guess that suits the sort of Indian narrative I put out earlier on. But Feed is quite a book towards the end. I'm not going to spoil it at all. I already spoiled enough about Buffy. She ended up being a little bit of a... I think she's a good Mary Sue, okay? She's a weird, quirky girl who happens to be a tech genius. That's probably the biggest flaw, the most unbelievable, that this untrained weirdo girl is better than the CIA. That's how they describe her and how she comes across in the story. That's about the most unbelievable in the first thing. And of course, as you're going along in the series, yeah, it ends up quite spectacular, and George ends up dead, okay? Did I spoil that book? Probably, but it's over 10 years old. Get over it, guys, okay? But the point is, it gets into a lot of excellent world building with how society would run with a zombie outbreak still being loomed around. So, should I just get back into the second book, which is something I'm currently on rereading because it starts breaking down. So you have Georgia finally dead at the end. She becomes a martyr for the cause, and everything's great, except for it's not. Okay. Second book, you got the brother. They have this sort of blog team that, because of Georgia and their coverage, becomes world renowned the whole time. They're getting like record ratings. There's a lot of talk about all the ratings they're getting as this upstart blogger sort of a trifecta. There's a lot of little kinks within there. Originally, they're just like betas, like secondary things, and they go into the alpha status and create their own site. And during the second book, you just find out how crazy things are going along in this particular story there. Yeah, beta male. I see that. Beta. Yeah. Became alpha bloggers, and because of all the press, them pretty much exposing this conspiracy within the basically everything gets pinned on this Tate guy. He zombies out. Little bit lame, but I think he's caught red-handed, so he's like, fuck it. Let me go ahead and zombie out and try to kill all these motherfuckers. That's how the first book ends. Quite excellently done, despite my poor explanation of it. Going deep into it, the technology is thought out, the world building is thought out. The fear is really something that strikes me, and the ethical concerns that the main character and most people do have for journalists, and how it sort of passed the buck to the younger generation and evolved into, yeah, people like presidents look down on these bloggers even after all this shit, but it's more because they can't control what they say. that people are on the blogger's side. And the fact they keep bringing up most of the internet search traffic is porn, because they don't, when they're talking about ratings, they don't consider porn, because it's like 90% of the market share of the internet, porn and other crap like that. So they're just going the little bit of the slice that isn't porn out there. Figures with the internet, it would be even more of an epidemic than it seems to be now, the porn crisis. I think it might be overhyped in reality, but maybe I'm wrong. I do think it's a concern for the future that's probably just going to get worse. Sorry, no slurs here. Oh, God. But yeah. So you're going to the second book. It's only the brother left. And I think she does this for a female writer. She does an acceptable job of writing the male. But of course, she makes him crazy, and he sees visions of George. He killed his sister because she was turning, and he now sees a hallucination, and he has to deal with the crazies, which comes across as weird, but I'll grant it that. They have this weird commingleship within that. And on that note, I might lose a lot of people, because it seems like this particular in the issue, this guy's much better, but this seems a little bit unhinged to me. So let him spoil.
Back to Undead October. Title card. I'm gonna rage. All right, so if you remember from last week, I was having a lot of fun reading Feed by Myra Grant, and I finished it, and I liked it. It's the first book in a trilogy, the Newsflesh Triology, and I was really looking forward to reading the second book. And the second book is Deadline. And yeah, I got about halfway through this, and I was really enjoying it. I thought it was written really well, and I thought that it had some really good reveals. In fact, it had an emotional reveal so powerful that I almost threw the book against the wall, because I was so shocked by what had just happened. But that just made me even more excited to keep on reading. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to DNF this. I am not willing to finish this at all because of a second reveal that happened.
Okay, let's brainstorm, people. What do you think the second reveal is? Okay, you have the twins, things, the Buffy, tech genius is sort of a dad. So is the sister. You're just stuck with Sean, who it's explained in the first book, they had a rather unhealthy relationship with each other. Codependence, I think. There's a whole section Georgia goes into, like, they would call this before the Rising codependence between me and my brother. But since the survival thing, I just consider it somewhat normal. So the reveal.
Happen later in this. I don't want to say it outright because it is fairly spoilery. So I'm just going to give you a moment, pause. You can quit this video if you don't want to find out what it is, but trust me when I say
you can quit the stream if you don't want this ruined, but you should know this. And this is rather stupid that this came as a surprise. Media check, boys. Literacy is not strong with this one.
It's a reveal so icky that it made me not even want to finish reading the series, okay? So spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Fucking stepcest. George and Sean, step-siblings, stepbrother and stepsister, they were romantically entangled.
Yes, and they go into a whole section about this, that they got tested to see that they weren't biologically related, because they were adopted together, and they have a really unhealthy codependent relationship that's clearly established in the first book. So let's see.
Intimately, romantically entangled. And none of this is even hinted at in the first book. And all of a sudden just rears its ugly head in the second.
Sorry, I have to laugh at that. I found this. A nice little break for this stream. This is idiotic. You have to have your blinders on so hard for this. I didn't even watch this. I'm like, this will be a great way to segue into Deadline, okay? Because yes, he's right. There's a really hot girl who's introduced in the second book. Probably a little bit too unrealistic, you know. She's hot. She's athletic. She is the fear of all of those people who don't like tomboy abs, okay? Legitimately badass chick who still takes care of her appearance because she's one of these Erlins. They even have this whole section where Sean goes on about how he finds it weird that she takes care of her appearances. And yeah, she has the hots for him. Okay, he's so oblivious because, yeah, he sort of was in this weird relationship with his stepsister. And I understand it, but this guy's a complete idiot if he thinks that there was no hint of it in the first book. So if stepsisters sort of having a secret relationship between each other weirds you out, the series isn't for you. But this is step brothers, and it makes sense in the society where it's really established you can't trust people very much. Okay. If it weirds you out, don't read the first book and keep this out of your mind.
Book in one of the grossest forms you can imagine, because it's one of those tropes where Sean has sex with someone else and then he accidentally says George's name, which is just repulsive. And
it's what gets so many guys in trouble. Okay, dude. What? They're step siblings, and it is set up. This is funny that he freaks out about this for this whole thing. Newsflesh, rage quit.
And I thought, again, it was one of those things where I thought that it didn't go there, but it did, because it just kept on going, made it abundantly clear that the indication of that they were romantically in a relationship, that was what they was going for. That is what canonically happened, and none of the characters treat this like this is any kind of weird thing.
Oh, that's a fucking lie. Okay. I'm going to get off of this joke fucking video. We go back to how my battles ass commentary. Let's see what I was doing.
And she faked her own death. That's the beginning of the story, so I don't think that's really ruining anything at this point.
Romeo.
Oh, never mind. You're sort of in my way. Can you not be in my way?
Yeah, okay. Waste of time as usual. Jumping in and out. But point being is Sean's crazy in the very beginning. And there's this cool ass little section where they go over cloning. Okay, they do it in a sort of stupid manner because the CDC scientist comes and steps at their door after, of course, the badass chick. There's a bit of fantasy element in this because they describe this chick as smoking hot, and how let me bring up the Twitter stuff. Because I think that some of this art, probably not the best here. Probably not the best here with Tumblr art, but give you a description of what I think this is meant to be her. I don't think they do her justice if this is her here. Southern Belle, that I think is supposed to be Georgia. Good night. They sleep in the same bed, so definitely some shit there. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the hot ass chick, and how. No, it can't be. I guess that's supposed to be Georgia. Okay. I don't know why they give her as a tan. Oh, fucking hell. Back to this. Sorry about that. Just wanted to show a little bit of the. I don't know where the artwork came from, but visual aids are good to have. But smoking ass, Southern Belle, I think, actually not Southern Belle, a sort of wasp family, which they explained at a certain point that she was all stuck up, prim and proper girl until she went away to college. Then she wanted to live life, and then her parents struck her out on their own. Sort of a fantasy woman. It sets up with her being a Irwin, training a sort of geeky guy who has a hots for her, of course, but she has the hots for fucking Sean, but he's unaware. He's the main protagonist. Shit like that goes down. But yeah, they come back. They're at their little Oakland office. A doctor chick comes in, and she explains she's been reported dead, so everyone gets freaked out. Dead things get killed. This is the world of zombies, after all. But it sort of is a break in the first thing because they found the body. It just seems a little bit stupid. That's probably the worst part in Deadline, is the whole misunderstanding over her being dead. Apparently, it's a way for reveal that cloning is a real thing in this world, and they can do full body clones, okay? Which will be a point that comes up in the third book. Hell, into the second book really gets into it. Third book probably goes the most off the rails, but in a fun ass way. So basically, they get this doctor info. They find out, there. You remember the good old sister who died? Yeah, she sort of had sort of the virus activate in her eyes. So she had zombie eyes, hence she had shades. So you find out a lot of people like her were being killed at a much greater rate than anyone else in the world. Okay. It was really odd. They wanted to sort of see, looking into this at the CDC. One of the doctors is like, yeah, this is getting too hot. Let's fake your death with a clone and get you out to these reporter guys with this so you can get down into the dirty. So the girl gets there, and shortly after, a zombie outbreak, which is considered uncontainable because of how insanely it breaks. So you get to see the sort of effect of the zombie outbreak really shortly into the second book. First book, really solid. Tried to gloss over some of the details. A lot of political intrigue in the first book is sort of absent from the second book. It's more high strung CDC power related things because the doctor comes in, they get a zombie outbreak, and shit breaks loose, and they have to get out of the city. They even sacrifice one person stays behind to stop the building from locking down so everyone in the crew can sort of fuck off. I think they probably could have developed the character of Dave, who stays behind a little bit better, but I think they work it in because later quite well, showing the relationship he had with people. But the minor nitpick with that one character, I think they could have done better, but they still establish him staying behind is something that they all needed to survive. They get the fuck out and they go to, remember the fictionals, Buffy from before? Well, of course she died, so they had to replace her. So you get the replacement, a rich chick with sort of a really secure foundation. They go to that. This is where you get the sort of sexy up scene between that the dude was freaking out about before. And that's how that goes down. He said, Sean goes down and says George's name while he's getting busy with the hot Irwin chick. Badass chick, good with guns. Used to be a Southern Belle type, sent to special parties until she went out. Good stuff all around. But that's sort of missing the point here. So they got a conspiracy. They got a doctor with them. They go to some mad scientist line and they find out people with the condition Georgia, the newsy chick from before, had retinal KA is what they call it. Zombie eyes is just the easier way to look at, where the zombie virus activated in a certain section was contained. That's sort of the cure. You're sort of immune after you have this condition. There's a certain amount because the good mad scientist doctor has a pit bull who can survive amplifying, turning into a zombie and coming back from it. So Georgia, they find out Georgia would have probably survived if her brother didn't shoot her because they thought that she was going to become a zombie. Plot twist that he's probably talking about before the sexy scene comes up. Oh, sorry about that. Please. I swear, you guys, okay? Not meaning for chat to become insane. Should give someone a wrench. I don't even know who in this case, okay? You guys all fighting. But that's besides the point. But yeah, it comes really down to that. And break it. Why do is drink
and run. Okay, so much fun, this puzzle. Worst thing in this game. Come on. Yeah, good enough. Might give me the time I need. Really just want to see if I can jump.
Thank you, me. Now let me switch to this.
Reading Sean, I know that Kayla wasn't the biggest fan. It's one of those as well that I think that the further in you read, the more you know that she's planned everything, but you can't predict any of it.
Yes. That's why my proudest.
It does feel that way within the story. There is a little bit of a planned out element that might come off a little bit artificial, at least in the second book. Okay. First book, a little bit there. Second book, even more.
Moment was when they mentioned the possibility of cloning. My proudest moment was like guessing correctly that they were going to bring Georgia back. I was like,
damn, they just ruined the plot twist. Remember the cloning element? Yeah, they bring Georgia back after you find out about her actually in the second book. Cloning's a real thing. They set up quite nicely in the second book for the end book reveal. Okay, and it's really planned out the 3 books overall, because it's not like the first book could have been standalone, but the second book is sort of like the OG Star Wars trilogy, where the second book sets up for the third book. It's quite interesting, but yeah, they bring up cloning and that Georgia would have survived by the mad scientist lab. Okay. Quite an interesting plot twist in the dirty thing where you find out they were sort of getting freaky with each other secretly. The step twins. Again, that turns you off. Fine. I really think it's really obviously indicated throughout the first book, unlike that one guy not seeing it coming from it.
that was like my proudest moment. I never guessed these things. And I was like, that makes sense. Why wouldn't they do that? I was like, yeah, guess one thing comes to my life.
Yeah, I guess that one. But I was very interested by the fact that in the second one, when they say that she would have lived, like that he didn't need to shoot her, because that I found a lot more harrowing than I expected it to, because it's like, because we're growing attached to Georgia, and then over the second book we've watched Sean beat himself up for something that he didn't do wrong. He had to do it, and then he didn't have to do it, but he would have had to do it. You know, like even when he's talking with brain Georgia that he's got, where he's hallucinating her, and she's saying, "Well, you would have had to do it anyway, because just because, but the test showed up that I'd been infected. Like if you hadn't shot me, someone else would have."
Yeah, there is a heroin scene where brain Georgia, basically a hallucination that Sean goes through the steps where, yeah, if you didn't shoot me, the CDC would have shot me. They go into this whole thing. How many times has the testing unit been faulty? Okay. They able to pull up like 3 times. In 2 of those cases, the people were shot anyways, the faulty units, okay? And we're compensated for it. So the legal system is strong, but death is much stronger. Like with the gun argument earlier, Georgia brings up to Tate, the extremist. Yeah, gun violence is down. That shows that data shows gun violence is down. But if someone's considered a zombie, it's not considered a murder. There's a sort of catch-22 in this world that quite makes sense. It all makes sense in the first book, aside from a little bit oddities here and there, which is quite acceptable.
Like, regardless.
I find that, really sad to read as well, because like you get used to zombie books being like, as soon as they're a zombie, they're dead. You just kill them. They're not the real person anymore. They're not who you love anymore. And that's fine. It's black and white. Just deal with it. But then for him to have struggled with the loss of Georgia so much, and then to find out that she would have recovered, I think that just messes with him even more. And I think that's why he continues to have so much like kind of psychological issues and mental health problems later on as well. He just can't cope with the fact that he feels like it's his fault, even though logically it's not. I feel like that's like an interesting aspect to explore as well, because again, with other zombie books, you don't have that. Like, very rarely do they ever find a cure. Very rarely do you see that it's the next stage.
Yeah, she's bringing up the fact that I find obvious. A zombie plague sort of saturated media for so long, I think, is why this zombie book got overlooked, and the dipshits wanted to give it to someone who wasn't doing a book about making a Republican candidate look good and talking about pretty much a zombie outbreak where everyone's wearing guns. Okay, that's just a theory, you know. Hugo Awards gone to shit. No one knows. No one cares. Good story. Could have gotten much better press, and I'm surprised there's almost no one fucking doing videos on this series. Okay, no one's talking about this in the scene. That's a tragedy. Besides little channels like this and the one Vapid chick who I tried to watch, it was like a Wikipedia reading.
And human evolution sort of thing, and like what's coming next. So it was interesting to see, like,
I don't know how she's getting this reading. It's just about a freak accident between pretty much the cure for cancer and the cure for the common cold mutating within a patient, and these sort of things that reanimated dead people, because this logic behind it is quite sound. It's supposed to get rid of any cancer cell and keep the body going. I don't know how the cold aspect sort of played into it, but you got to give some loose science to some of the stuff.
this one.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, again, how that parallels COVID, right? Where there's the whole idea that if you've gotten COVID, that you're kind of immune to it, or at least for a period of time, or unless there is a mutation. And it's exactly the same thing with Calisambly, which is the zombie virus, that you have this.
Yes. She's stringing it out. There's different sort of variables with it. They bring up the fact that the pack, there's sort of in the first book, it introduces the sort of pack mentality between these zombies and sort of how they evolve over time. And that becomes a sort of element that comes into play with the sort of conspiracy theory in the second book. Because you find out this sort of a zombie eye thing, you know, containing the virus, zombie virus being activated in a certain part makes that person immune, at least a certain amount of the time, and why they don't want to spread that. There's a certain element of, like with the coronavirus, saying everyone needs to take the vaccine, everyone needs to be scared, take the mask. The same sort of thing is reiterated within this book. Culture of fear from this virus. And the book takes this to a way insane sort of in-step that I think sort of makes sense. CDC got unlimited power. Same with the World Health Administration. So they were using it unlimitedly, okay? They wanted a virus that they could control, because you can't. There's also a little hitch. If you got rid of the sort of virus within someone, they would be dead, okay? They would be virus free and would stay dead, but it would kill the person, the whatever process they did, because it was so sort of ingrained into the sort of activity there. Science feels like it exists clearly. Yes, she talks about how she studied, got experts, or at least people well researched in whatever areas she was talking about. Maybe the book was too researched with too young a protagonist, because it wasn't young adult, but it has a young adult feel. So I think it was sort of stretching that line between young adult and adult books. Not quite mature, but mature enough, in my personal opinion, to be appealing to both young adults, maybe even some teenagers, and probably some adults.
Really smart people and things like that. So she and just like do a Google search, she properly made sure all was sense. I also liked, what are they called again? The what Georgia has, that condition, reservoir conditions.
Reservoir conditions.
Yeah, I thought that whole.
Thank you. Reservoir conditions, the zombie eyes, the activated virus only being in the eyes. It causes trouble for dilation, why she has to wear the sunglasses. But it can't happen in other parts. Hell, even Ryman's, the Republican candidate, the wife supposedly has the same condition, reservoir condition within the eyes. But they're so damaged, she doesn't get pain in her eyes, why Georgia still does. The different degrees of the same condition is reflected in two different women in that book.
Aspect was really well done, and I thought it was like a very interesting kind of thing. Because you'd imagine that anyone with that kind of condition, they'd still just kill because they'd be overzealous and just want rid of everyone who's got the kind of hint of the virus. But to know that people have active parts of the virus and it's kind of, dormant.
Yes, and she's stringing this out. Yes, it's dormant, but it makes them immune. And somehow through sex, Sean apparently is immune to the virus. I guess antibodies from the, immune sister who's now dead passed on to Sean. The only reason he survived is because he got bit by a zombie in a fit of rage and came back to the mad scientist lab where they find out. They give him the test. He's all expecting to be killed and be infected. Mad scientist chick, she sounds a little hot, maybe a little bit older, a little bit chubbier, but curvy ladies, crazy curvy ladies might just be my kink. Sorry, guys. Aside from that, she gives him the test and he's like, bam, you're sort of cured. You can't be affected by zombies, but they can still tear you apart. So don't be stupid, okay? Don't be that stupid. That becomes a plot point more in the third book. Also, there's a lot of other things I'm overlooking, which is always smart to do if you want someone to get into the Newsflesh Triology. A lot of interesting concepts that parallel the coronavirus, the lockdowns rather well, concerning the sort of ethics that we're going into. YouTubers and people, alternative media, really having a rise in voice for a very good reason. Many different reasons, but the people on the internet is getting more of a voice. Let's hope we don't need a zombie apocalypse to pull it off. Hell, in this world, it probably actually kept the finger of political people in power because of the lockdown and stuff. Imagine mainstream press is being the only thing we could get because of state of emergency. Horrible thought to put out there.
Far-fetched, but
Yes.
the way we get there.
No, they try to explain they had sex enough that the antibodies that Georgia, who had the reservoir condition, zombie eyes again, passed to the stepbrother who had an unhealthy relationship, which is established in the first book. So by the end, they confront the doctor who sent freaking the other doctor to Oakland to these guys, sort of as bait. He has his whole big speech. He thinks that things are gonna not quite work out, and they don't really work out too well. But in the end of the day, he ends up with being immune, and you find out the sister got cloned.
Mhm.
Is realistic enough.
I like the lead-in and I like the build-up of it. And I loved the whole sections with Georgia and the kind of facility.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't just appear. If you'd only got it from Sean's point of view, I would have hated it, I think.
Yeah.
But because you got Georgia, whatever version
We got a freeze frame from
because
her.
you got diverged together.
I don't think
I feel
that
like
was
that's
my
how it
internet for
worked.
once.
Yeah. I think she just crafted.
I don't even know why they really they're women, of course. Okay, you got to give them sort of handicap why they want the female perspective, and they do sort of give that the waken scene at the very end of book 2. You have some woman waking up. The reveal, she's in this weird room. She feels weird. She's all thin and straggly. Her hair's longer than she likes because they explain like the female Irwin, a really hot one in the very beginning of the book, which I don't think they talked much about. Probably a misstep. Okay, I think she is a good selling point, at least for males. She is a freaking fantasy. Hot geeky guy has it for her. She's tomboy, beautiful, but athletic. Every man's dreams, okay? And she's depicted as a rather sexual beast. Well, sexy beast, okay? Very hot. and uses her beauty and athletics in her role as an action blogger.
With Georgia is that she's not the first Georgia.
No, they really explain how much the clones cost. Okay, it's not something really easy to replicate. And they do have a sort of a science-why-me sort of explanation why they're able to transfer Georgia's memory from her dead body, because Sean shot her in the spine, leaving her head clear. They didn't want to mess up her face and probably set up for this. I guess the spine's good enough to take out a zombie in this world. Good enough. It works out. Her brain is preserved partially by the virus, partially by the technology that's increased within. So they're able to copy her memories pretty exact as they go through. Yep. They explain it here. Good enough. And I'm let them take it here.
Clone either.
Yes.
There's been a whole process. There's been a load of Georgias that have been disposed of, essentially.
Yes.
I think that that's quite good as well. I think that's quite well done. That it's not just first attempt at cloning Georgia is perfect. I mean, their reasoning for specifically cloning Georgia was questionable.
Especially when they say how much it would have cost to make her.
Yeah, it's a little iffy with that. I mean, the explanation that she was the sort of one to blow the lid off the conspiracy, so she would stand the best chance of sort of quelling the sort of conspiracy mind if they brought her back. The journalist who exposed this conspiracy to be like, yeah, they brought me back. I'm that girl. And there's no conspiracy. Here, my brother Sean, he'll contest to it. They were trying to sort of use her as bait for brother to control them, because these guys, these bloggers, just without a rule. And they do some interesting stuff with the variety of it, sort of a reveal, which I'm not going to reveal here. Let's see if they do it here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of everyone that you're going to clone, Georgia. Really, I mean, I know.
Don't bring that up. Don't bring it up. That was bad.
Whole political thing, but like, you spend that much money, and it specifically be Georgia that you're cloning, seemed a bit questionable. But you know, like, I feel of all the things that she did do quite well, that's one that I can somewhat overlook. But that is one I am deliberately pulling a blind eye to, because
I don't think it's that bad. I understand the concerns with it. The whole cloning thing seems out of pocket. Not Resident Evil 6 level or the TV show. Fucking making Wesker a black guy. Weird ass shit. There's no wokeness in this that I can tell. Almost everyone's straight. Hell, they're bare. I depict most of them as white people. So, except for Mahir, who's, of course, an Indian guy, okay? Pretty white cast, okay? This was before all the PC stuff sort of run rampant. Probably also another reason the book got overlooked. Not enough minority characters, I guess. Well, a lot of minority secondary characters, but the two main characters were white, and even Buffy was described as white. Maybe that's why the Tumblr fan art is trying to darken what they see as the hot chick who, fucking hell, why are they not bringing her up at all? This is an oversight of this podcast. I'm going to have to look up her name real quick. I should know it.
Asking questions, that's a rabbit hole I won't
For me, that's like the only bit that was a wee bit suspect. The rest of it, I feel like, just fit really well. Enjoyed. And then, well, linking into the short story, if you want to jump to that.
Yeah.
Like,
my mic was muted. I don't want to jump to that. Okay, the short story is something I did not want to really get into. So let's just put this back on and I can finish up without aid, hopefully. So let's give myself some lead. And nothing's going on there. But I'm looking for the name because it's bothering me now. I can remember characters. Not helping me out. Should have planned things out a little bit better. You get to watch some excellent book characters.
Oh,
And maybe this book isn't as
black
good
and
as
white filter
I
is
give it credit
fine.
for. It does certainly have flaws, but it was well
I think he's
researched.
gonna have to do
And this is why I'm talking about
I
the sort
really
of
should be able to jump this.
yeah. Shut up, me, pass me. You suck. I'm not much better. But oh, names, not giving me the booby girl. What is booby hot girl? I don't think it's gonna give it to me that easily. Okay, hot chick. I might remember her name. I might not. Let me not delay this any longer. She becomes relevant, yet these two girls don't want to talk about her. Fair enough. The sort of a romance angle between the step siblings is their prime focus, and they're jumping a little bit to feedback, which is the Democratic side, which even they thought was really, really weak and wouldn't have helped the series if the writing was that weak. Turn of the leaf, most authors sort of lose their coolness after a few years, and I'm sure being an echo chamber of the sort of science fiction writers of America probably put that ideological blend that definitely probably decline of the science fiction writing and fantasy writing. Jameer had a stupid thing that won the Hugo Awards. Hell, that's half my problem with the Hugo Awards, promoting crappy stuff. Why not pushing up good stuff like the person who did The Martian and the new movie with Ryan Gosling that's going to come out, I believe, next year, Project Hail Mary, snubbed them, and even sort of the president of the science fiction of America, the basically the person who picked the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, way too much power in there, sort of did a diss piece on Andy Weir just because he didn't really understand certain things. Like, let me not go into all that. Okay, I have a whole video on that. In reality, it's not really incest if they're step siblings. Okay, step sibling fantasy in the end. Okay, very popular on, I think that would be strange to look it up. I'm pretty sure that's hot. The step fantasy porn, I think, is pretty high. I wonder if it's higher than MILF or other weird sort of porn sites. But I'm getting off track because I'm getting into the third book, which you got the clone of Georgia. She has 97 or something like that replication between memory. They come across her in a really contrived way, I think. And there's a lot of fucking super science, like a super hacker that sort of comes. It's still acceptable enough. And these two women here, I guess I'll switch back to them because I'm running out of steam because I'm a jackass.
A non-binary person on your team, but
What?
you're the one that's having a hard time.
Yeah. There's just
Who's non-binary in the book? Oh shit. Of course they're talking about the new book. Of course they have to put a fucking non-binary person. This is why I knew not to read this book. It was the Democratic revised 2020 edition post-Trump. Knew it was going to be horrible. They just probably talk about characters I have no fucking clue about. Oh, let's just listen for the laugh. See how bad this is.
Okay, so they defy gender, gender normative rules. That's it. Like, aside from that, we didn't really have anything that would specify that Matt was non-binary. Like, they use they them pronouns, and they like doing one boyish thing and one girlish thing. And it's like,
yeah.
you couldn't have given us a little bit more depth there with them.
And then also, is there not a
Well, at least she didn't go full woke, full. Oh,
I think so.
I didn't like that because I don't think we needed to know.
They're talking about the misgendering of a character in this new book. Oh God, there's also a really base series by another Grant. Okay, but that's a pen name, Michael Grant, who was the people who did Animorphs fame, but he did a really interesting young adult series called the Gone series. 6 books. Of course, it starred a white male protagonist. They did have a lesbian in the original series, but she didn't feel forced. And after it did the revival, post 2016 revival, they had to sort of degrade the sort of a white main character from the previous book. He's an alcoholic who nothing going on in his life. The new cast is like a girl, typical white girl, vapid, blah blah blah. The hot black guy who she's into, and a non-binary character. I swear, sci-fi is getting ruined by all the Trump stuff. I should hate Trump just for how insane he made some decent writers, but they probably would have descended into insanity no matter what. God damn you, Stephen King. Why focus on politics? Okay, you can feel however you want. Don't be so cringe on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call. Oh, it's just so disappointing seeing all these writers fall. Hell, even John Sazzi, yeah, he was a horrible person. He's not a very good writer, but he has I'm getting off on side tangents. Let's get this back, this cringe here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it should have just been known that they were non-binary the whole way through, but you as an author should never know what their at birth gender should have been. But I feel like it had to be pigeoned in. And I was like, I don't think that was necessary. It was obviously to pinpoint a flaw with the other character. I just feel like that didn't need to happen. Like, we didn't need to know that.
And a flaw with the other character should not come at the expense of the minority character.
Yeah, I just feel like if that was more the focus of the book, and if it was more about things like that, it would have made
that would happen. If it were about
this is funny to look at. They're having problems with gender politics in the new book, the sort of alternative perspective from the Democratic side. I read about this book and I misgendering. Oh God, this is where this go off the rails. Original trilogy didn't have any of this shit. Good world building, good sort of a change from the norm of zombie books by having a society sort of adapt it for living with the zombies. Okay. Some people wanted to eradicate all the zombies despite it sort of coming at a great risk. And a lot of the science is really thought out, thorough, and researched between the sort of virus components come across as believable, comes across really well that the virus concepts behind the zombie virus in this book series is really well thought out. Characters might come off as a little stereotypical and generic, but overall it comes off as believable enough within the setting that it is contained in. Okay, so that is that. This is this. You tell me what you want. I'll listen to my cringe.
Make sure nothing is here.
Okay. Yeah, checking back. It was halfway a playthrough, a halfway explanation about this feed book. Crazy new feed book, shortly after I read it. So much more craptastic than I am currently. But that's really besides the point. I'm just done with them sort of talking about the book turned woke, and I had a fear of that. But the third book sort of goes off the rails, full-blown conspiracy theory. You had Clone George with most of her memory back. Something about this. There's another sort of crazy, insane girl, a redhead this time, called the Fox, along with the hackers who sort of set the doctor up with a sort of a chip. Okay. Some nastiness in this, some believable leaps in logic, but overall, well thought out. Goes a little bit off the rails to sort of end it, but the conspiracy theory sort of resolves itself. Not going to spoil the last book. Worst of the trio, but it does wrap things up well enough. And it's not woke. There's no gender politics, which apparently gets in this new Democratic retelling of this particular story, which I assume to be the case just from what I heard about it. Okay, maybe they're back on the main series. From what I'm seeing, we'll see.
Protagonist.
Yeah.
If he's still being the side character.
Yeah, exactly.
If he was still the side character, I think it would have he could have been less functional and it would have worked and made sense, but because he was the main protagonist, he just couldn't. So yeah.
So yeah, in terms of
To a certain
representation, it's like I understood the necessity for both the grief-induced schizoaffective disorders and also the need for him to be functional. However, I do appreciate that.
Okay, we're not getting anything out because I skipped too far ahead. But that's all in all. This wasn't a really well thought out stream, but I liked where it went, as limited as I could. Got through the first book well enough with some visual aid comparisons. It's definitely, the trilogy is something that holds up, I think, still to this day. And after the post-corona lockdown with, was it the CDC? Fauci, sort of, not being exactly truthful about all the facts about the virus. Sort of ironic within this particular world how well it mirrors it, even if it is a hyperbolic, crazy experience in the end with the allegory of the zombies overall. So there's not much I can add. It's definitely a base series that works out quite well in the end. Again, you give some sort of liberties for the third book. It's a good conclusion. It's a little bit over the top, and yeah, it kills off the hot athletic chick at the end, but her sacrifice is well warranted. People need to make sacrifices sometimes, and sorry for all you gooners out there. The hot chick ends up sacrificing at the end to let Georgia the second, as she revealed in sort of the sort of blog post they lay out. But the resolution is good enough, little over the top. It ramps up over the series, but is believable within the context. Definitely a series I recommend more people read, and the relevance to it, especially with the journalism, I'm like rereading it. I'm like, yes, God, yes. Journalists stating their bias, okay? Jordan, I think, did the truth fact-based bias. Why Rick, who was following the sort of porn star girl candidate for presidential in the first book, had a sort of liberal, slightly left-wing bias. Who the hell knows about Sean? He's just a crazy guy, the whole thing. Only reason I think the book did the character believably enough is because a woman was writing. Women typically have a hard time writing male characters, and they gave enough liberties. But that's saying males also in book writing, novel writing, unless they have a lot of research and co-writing status, sometimes their female characters come across as rather flat and just sexed up or dumbed down female characters, unless that's the sort of book you're looking for. Again, rather ill-conceived stream that I think I should just end here. Let me just see if I have anything to say in this final fight here. Nope. Yep. Good time to end. This was the end of the video that I put up there. Okay. Me talking about feed while playing Resident Evil 2. Quite a few years old and rather lame.
So I went over the conspiracy, the assassination with zombies, and again, no real bioweapon.
Oh yeah, this was a mess. Okay, but that's the end of the stream. I thought I would give it a try and talk about a book series I think is really unappreciated. Next time I try this, I'm going to have a little bit more for it, because it's going to be something I did a rundown for. I was, sorry, Elden Ring's on my brain, so Demon Souls, Dark Souls, blah, 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 sort of intruding within my mind. I'm going to try to schedule something for Dungeon Crawler Carl. A lit RPG with some scientific elements that really makes a really appreciated series, and I'm going to have visual aids for that. And I'm sure there's actually probably people talking about it because it's getting a lot more love than some things. Thank God for audiobooks, because a lot of novels would probably be laid by the wayside if it wasn't for that. And of course, other visual aids. Okay. Until next time, take care. Bye.